Edward and Diana Barron, along with their son Ethan, are the current owners of the Heurtley house.
A lot of people ask us how we ended up here, what our first impression of the house was. We had no intention of buying a Lloyd Wright house. We had no intention of living in Oak Park. We came here essentially for a free tour. We fell in love with it during the tour. Don't ask me why. The amount of work that needed to be done was incredible, but the house had a maybe kind of energy to it that you could still feel, even though it was a little bit dilapidated.
The first time we came to this house, we pull up the driveway, I jump out of the car because this house it just looked different. I mean, it looked unusual, it looked interesting, it had this really wild design about it, and unlike any of the other houses, it made me walk around the house. It was the only house that I walked the exterior before even entering it.
I have to say that most other people thought we were a little bit nuts. There's a reason probably why the house is on the market for 3.5 years. Although I think a lot of them didn't realize that it wasn't structural. Arthur Heurtley was a very wealthy man, and this house was built, was a very expensive house to build. Our walls at the base are almost 2.5 feet thick. So even though it needed a lot of cosmetic work and every surface had to be gone over, that it was a very well-built house. And I think there are a lot of things that other people had a hard time seeing.
People will ask us, how much did the restoration cost? And that's a natural question when you realize what it looked like before and what it's become and what we've done with it. And I think when you find a passion, if you find something that you're passionate about and you realize you want to have it done perfect, then any amount of resources you spend on it is an appropriate amount because it's something that you feel within, and on a personal level, you feel it's worth it. The most difficult part of the restoration was at the beginning, and there's a point where you just don't see the end of the tunnel. It's a lot of work, something you don't you can come home and visually see that this has been done. And the best part of the restoration is obviously the completion with the furniture. Once that furniture was in, all of a sudden you just took this deep breath and said, oh my gosh, we're here and we made it.
Whenever I give a little architectural tour, I always like to end up in the living room and talk a little bit about why I think this house is so important in modern architecture itself, not only as well as in Wright's career. And it's important for 3 reasons. Number one, if you think about Victorian homes at the turn of the century, they tended to have very small rooms for specific purposes. If you look at our living room and dining room, they begin to flow together into one room. So Wright begins to break the box down. If you look at the doors between our living room and dining room, Heurtley had those doors put in, but they're not on the original plan. So Heurtley made Wright add those doors. If you look at our foyer downstairs in our playroom, that's an extremely long expanse for 1902. Wright is breaking the box down. Not only that, when you go up into the dining room and living room, you have glass on all 3 sides of you, stained glass, and without curtains. Wright used stained glass, so they wouldn't have to use curtains. But having glass on all 3 sides of you instead of small windows in Victorian homes, Wright is bringing the outside in. And then on top of that, by putting all the main living quarters on the 2nd floor, Wright's able to break the box down. He changes the box by incorporating the roof line into the main rooms. So Wright opens the box up, Wright breaks the box down, and Wright lets nature in. That's eventually what became the whole Brauhaus. That's eventually what became Wright's Usonian homes. That's eventually what became ranch homes. So in some way, I think you have the very primordial beginnings of modern architecture. I think there are really 3 ways to experience the energy and the power of this house. You have to either come here during a party. This house is made for entertaining. You have to come here sometime in the evening when it's a bright sunny day out, and when the light is coming through the living room and the dining room around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, it can be a magical experience. Or you have to come here one winter evening and sit in front of a raging fire, sipping on a glass of cognac, and just watch the light of the fire dancing off the gold leaf in the stained glass windows. There's nothing you can compare it to.